Welcome to the February 19th edition of the Clemson Dubcast. Happy Friday to everyone out there. We are 5 days away from the start of Clemson spring practice. That is hard to believe, but it actually feels kind of good to get to it at this early juncture. Tigers trying to get that sour taste out of their mouths, of course, but also an opportunity to see yet another crop of highly regarded mid-year enrollees. Plenty of analysis and insight from Paul Strelow and I coming up this weekend, so check it out at TigerIllustrated.com. Title sponsor of the Dubcast since the very beginning, back in August of 2018, Parham Smith & Archenhold Law Firm in downtown Greenville. They want you to know that their office remains open and available to serve you during the COVID-19 crisis. They are also offering their clients the ability to meet via telephone or through video conferencing. Whether you have a loved one who has suffered from a car accident, defective product, a neglectful nursing home facility, or medical malpractice issue, Parham Smith & Archenhold's Greenville lawyers can provide the protection and guidance you need. Free consultations, 864-990-4581, or on the web at parhamlaw.com. That's P-A-R-H-A-M law.com. Celero Communications, formerly known as Tandem Payment, is a full-service integrated electronic payments provider powered by leading-edge technology. Celero provides a wide array of merchant solutions, simplified payments. They make onboarding, taking payments, maintaining risk management and compliance, and getting support quick and easy. At Celero, they're all about helping you achieve sustainable growth as a business. Taking payments isn't the only thing your business needs. With Celero's solutions, you can manage inventory, sell products and services via social media, schedule staff, track sales, get reports, and much, much more. Find out more about Celero at celerocommerce.com. That's C-E-L-E-R-O commerce.com. If you're in the Eastern Midlands and PD area and you're in any way interested in buying and selling a home, commercial property, land, need to consider reaching out to Uptown Realty. They're based out of Sumter and run by a friend of mine, Patrick Enzer, big Clemson guy, used to cover the Tigers in a newspaper capacity, longtime supporter of Tiger Illustrated, longtime listener to the Dubcast. The home buying process should be an enjoyable experience, so let Patrick and his staff do all the heavy lifting. All you got to do is pick up the phone and call 803-774-0435 or go to uptownrealtysc.com. Okay, to our interview with my longtime colleague, longtime friend, Paul Strelow. Man, we covered just about everything under the sun in this interview, but one of the main things, what is it like to cover recruiting? All right, here we go. Good stuff. Enjoy. All right, joined by my good friend, Paul Strelow. How you doing, man?
Doing great, Larry.
Well, first of all, I want to ask you, I just pulled up the story on how the dead period extension impacts Clemson. And can you help me understand what in the world is going on here? Like the root of it, of this being extended, and tell me something that maybe I'm not grasping as to, I mean, are we all exasperated at the same level pretty much as we try to follow this?
Oh, I think I think probably plenty of college coaches are. But I suspect they're, beyond the politicization of this all, is just generally trying to come up with a uniform standard. Like, I can buy the logistics of, certainly when the pandemic came last March and there was so much uncertainty, it was common sense to kind of everyone pump the brakes, and, not send coaches on the road and kind of save everybody from themselves and eliminate recruiting visits at that point. I can buy the rationale as well during the college football season, whether I agree or disagree with it. I can buy the logic of, if you're trying to keep these college teams in a bubble, even though you're not calling it a bubble, and you're trying to make sure everyone gets through this season, taking all measures possible to eliminate, risks of exposure for players, coaches, personnel, just generally other people around your NCAA football teams. So while, whether I agree or disagree, I can get reasoning behind no recruiting visits at that point. But I think for the NCAA to extend it all the way through April 15, a couple months ago, and then now to push it through the end of May, I just can't really buy, other than there are still pockets of the country, thinking particularly the West Coast, where there are much greater restriction in terms of gathering and being able to go out and about. I've drawn the very much the false equivalency, here where we can go to Walmart and you can be standing in line and be surrounded by a bazillion different people, from all, masked, unmasked, at the great range there. But you're saying, college, a high school student and his family can't go to a college football office and pass certain tests or have, various protocols put in place where they can't tour the building. That doesn't really add up to me. But, I think that particularly when you've got certain areas of the country, if you're a Pac-12 school, you're going to, and they have the restrictions they have out there. Well, you're going to be awfully angry if, ACC, SEC schools are just welcoming, kids in with open arms, and you can't. So I suspect there's for one, there's a degree of trying to find something uniform, and then as well as trying to settle upon what would be the accepted protocol to what standards would, high school athletes and their families have to pass, what tests, coming up with something uniform there, to try and keep it a level playing field for everyone, at bringing in recruits. Really, I think it's the NCAA just kicking the can forward right now. I think you see it in many respects, whether it's name, image, likeness, transfer rules, etc. They don't want to take action on anything. And some of that might just be for litigious reasons. Some of that might be fighting change, period. But we see a strong push toward inactivity with the NCAA, and this kind of matches up with that as well, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned the politicization of it, which is true. But on the other hand, like the affected parties, who obviously their opinions are probably all over the map on safety, lack of safety, whatever. Mm-hmm. Also, coaches, even media folks. It seems, this is anecdotal, but it seems like unanimously, exasperated by this. Am I right on that? I mean, or is it more of a nuance?
I mean, I think everyone I've come across has been. Now, certainly you read, I think Lincoln Riley has been, I don't know necessarily on visits, but, I think he very much voiced concern over just generally having football. And I think he's, a little more on that end of the spectrum. But as far as recruiting visits, I haven't gotten any feedback, at least from the sample that I have and who we deal with, that is against it. And that's the strange part to me, is it's not like these are, a couple of detached leaders at the top of the NCAA who are just kind of making a decision for PR purposes, completely, detached from everything. I mean, this recommendation came from a group of athletic directors, conference directors, and head coaches. David Cutcliffe was on there. Whit Babcock from Virginia Tech, the athletic director there. You'd think with that many voices on there, it would not, that there would at least be some discussion about it or some middle ground, as opposed to just kind of very uniformly saying nope and pushing it back without any explanation, really. So I think that's, I think that's probably as much exasperated everyone is, well, how did you reach this decision? Explain it to us a little bit, other than just saying, no, we can't. And we're just being cautious.
It's interesting just because here at Clemson, I'm just thinking out loud about the hierarchy. You have Dabo Swinney, Dan Radakovich, Jim Clements, and then the board. I mean, I'd be shocked if all those parties were not in lockstep in their belief that, yes, we can pull off hosting visits. And so that's where you wonder what the situation is at other places, to the degree that it leads to this decision being made by those supposedly representative bodies.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree. And, I think that's also one of the tricky parts of being the NCAA is you've got a wide range of opinions out there, and probably a wide range of sentiments from the various universities. and there's such pressure to have for leadership to take one direction. And I think they probably, because of that, have just taken the, quote unquote safe direction of not doing anything, just for the sake of, whether it is public relations or, to avoid lawsuit or, just the abundance of caution.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I guess it was like a week ago. I have not kept up on with this, but there was a father of a Tennessee, I guess it was a mid-year enrollee who was helping move in Knoxville and I guess got COVID and was in the hospital for an extended period. I don't know if you are aware of that, but I was reading about that last week. So, I mean, there's obviously danger and the possibility of, really scary situations. But the thing is, it seems like from the parents, not just the recruits' point of view, but the families of the recruits are just like, what is going on? Like, we can do this. Like, we're, it can be pulled off, especially when you have 19,000 fans in a stadium on on fall Saturdays.
I don't think it undermines the severity of COVID, and that it is, that we do need to worry about it, and it is serious. But there's also the, somewhat, not life goes on, but we can manage situations and not have to, why are recruits put in a bubble, when we're seeing across other realms of society that you can function, and still try and manage and take precaution against COVID. So
I think too, like, shouldn't these universities and coaches and all the people in the ecosystem who went through so much work and jumped through so many hoops over, 6 months or whatever it was to have a season, couldn't it be argued that they have some money in the bank? Well, I mean, literally they have money in the bank on the coach's part, but figuratively, like, is there being enough made of the what seems to, at least to me, to have been a splendid job of pulling that thing off in a safe way? And you saw very few instances of sort of more, I guess, sort of corrupt, selfish decision making and skirting of the rules and all that. Or am I being a Pollyanna on that?
I part of me, like, you wonder, okay, why aren't coaches being more vocal? You saw how Trevor Lawrence speaking up, and others made such a difference in pushing forward the football season. Okay, who is the leader? Where are the voices pushing through? Who's standing up for the recruits? Who's standing up for the kids? But by the same token, I don't blame any college coach for not saying anything, because the more they talk, the more they're slapped with, hey, you're making all this money. You're taking advantage of these kids who are your employees. That slapback comes to them so quickly that it almost does just behoove them to just sit back and let everything run its course. So to me, there's the great juggling act there, and I don't really blame them for just kind of taking what is given to them at this point.
Yeah. I think, like, over the summer, it seemed fairly common and even reasonable to envision sort of coaches and universities sort of making up the rules as they went along and covering stuff up because of the pursuit of there's a lot of money at stake. And so, okay, they're going to, surely if Dick Saban tests positive before the Iron Bowl, he's not going to have to sit out the Iron Bowl. And surely if Tony Elliott tests positive before the, CFP semifinal, they'll find a way to cover that up. I've been really impressed at the above board and sort of deferential nature a lot of these coaches and athletics directors have had in sort of, hey, we're going to defer to the medical staff because it's important. And I mean, you feel the same way that it maybe unfolded in a way that a lot of the cynical folks, possibly us included, didn't envision?
I'm definitely atop the cynical chart there in all things, particularly related to athletics. But yes, I very much agree. With the Tony Elliott being an example, obviously Alabama, you're hoping you find ways for Nick Saban to be cleared, but just the general fact that that information came out, and was released, and that they very much kind of, you're not being full disclosure on everything, but the fact that they released that, brought that to light, and the public kind of followed along through that process, I think was a level of accountability that they won't get credit for, because people will say, well, it should be like that, but it's usually not like that. And so I do think it warrants, a golf clap or whatever for those guys for doing so, for athletic departments, for universities, trying to show, hey, we're doing the best we can here.
And then, Nick Saban, when the Georgia game, when he tested positive, and then he was able to take 3 more tests or whatever, and so it was a false positive, I guess. So obviously, the dominant conclusion is, oh, well, of course it's a false positive. They have a huge game against Georgia. I don't know, maybe I'm not cynical enough. I didn't really buy into that. And I think what happened with the Iron Bowl was sort of confirmation that, hey man, most of these coaches are handling this the right way. Yeah.
If it was truly the way we envision it, Nick Saban would have never had the positive test to begin with.
And then on Clemson's side, like the Trevor Lawrence situation. I mean, I guess you could say surprised when, after, he tests positive. And so the story immediately with the Notre Dame game looming 9 days from that point is, oh, well, surely he's going to be back by the Notre Dame game. They're going to, they'll figure out, they'll jump through whatever hoops they have to and adopt whatever rationalizations they have to so he can play in South Bend. And then, heck, after the Boston College game is over, Dabo just cuts it all off at the pass and says he's not playing. And I think the root of that was that people weren't talking about at the time was they had previous players who had to go through the same protocol, so it would not look right internally, let alone externally, if you suddenly change the rules for your star player so he can come back to play in a huge game.
That is a great point. And in the end, it's still kind of funny that probably came back to work to their advantage to have Trevor coming back and I won't say losing to Notre Dame helped them. But it certainly, I think, added a little oomph to the ACC championship game. But yes, just speaking more to COVID related, I think what you say is spot on as far as, establishing within your own program, these are the guidelines and that we are going to follow them, because if you don't, that not only reflects poorly on leadership and accountability, but in the end, it's probably something that's going to come back to bite them, whether it's, it would get out, and I think that is a big factor here, or a factor as you consider just how much voice, players have and everything these days with social media, is you better be accountable for your actions, because if not, it's going to surface.
Shift into sort of the media climate, I guess, in the coverage of all this stuff, and I'm mainly speaking nationally. I think I remember talking about this with you, or maybe I actually wrote about it. A really bizarre sort of turnabout in the midst of the Trevor Lawrence thing was, I mentioned that, everybody's assuming, Dabo and Clemson are going to do whatever it takes for Trevor to play in that Notre Dame game, and then Dabo does what ends up being like unquestionably the right and smart and healthy thing, and looking out for his guy and his guys. And then somehow a media personality, Paul Feinbaum, the next week is like, all right, what is he trying to hide here? What is what is Dabo doing by holding Trevor out of this game? Something else has to be going on. And it's like, he can't win. I mean, it's unreal.
What's the ulterior motive? But I mean, you could even go back to the spring and the various headlines there. Like, no matter whether we feel like, he said the right things at the right times, I think if you peel back the layers and look at what is his objective, and his direction, like, it's really was not worth criticizing. But I think he's reached the point where Saban was a couple years ago, where he's just, because Clemson, several factors, because Clemson has won so much, he's out there on a pedestal, and you've got, whether it's the Christian factor also kind of adding in there, but he's winning, a guy who's otherwise likable. I think that the tide turns on everybody the longer you're at the top. And I think he's experienced that, where he's suddenly, instead of being the darling, people have, like to go after him because they like to go after the people on top, and kind of knock people off the pedestal a little bit. And so I think he's in the middle of that point, really the last year or so, which is where Saban was after Alabama had won its first couple in a row, where everything you do is going to be, every word's going to be parsed, and it's not like he's above reproach and above scrutiny. But, I do feel like there's a point, he's reached the point where everything is needled, and perhaps unnecessarily.
Yeah, the one contrast between the Saban sort of evolution and how he's been treated or handled by the media and Dabo is that I don't think Saban was ever like this refreshing and cuddly new story.
True.
He was Darth Vader from the beginning. But
he did. Yeah, he didn't. I guess you're right. He never exactly endeared himself. But the fact that you go back to several things where certain head coaches, particularly from the Saban tree, just release like one sentence, statement type things. Dabo will go into great length and talk about and give you his opinion, but because he gives you his opinion, that opens up to the other side. Whichever side of the ledger you're on, the other side is going to go after it, and just because you get personality from him, I think that ends up coming back to bite him, which is a shame, because we want to get to know, these coaches and who they are, and we give them every reason to just kind of, go into a shell, give coach speak, and not want to, kind of open up themselves to us.
Yeah, he gets sort of placed to a higher standard the more he opens up, and it's like you have to remind yourself, okay, he's not a diplomat, he is a football coach, that's
yes.
That's who he is. But then again, it's like the way that our sort of discourse goes now, I think it sort of goes both ways, the pull between two extremes. Like, so, when he says stuff over the summer, yes, you have your people nationally who are kind of trashing it, but it also is to the point where if you have a, less forceful reaction to it and a more measured response, such as, okay, I don't know if he could have said this, maybe he didn't say that right, but overall I didn't have a big problem with it. Even if the mere, a small sort of smidgen of criticism, then you're getting unloaded on by fans, some fans who don't think that anything that he says should ever be questioned or criticized. And so it's just that pull between the two.
No, that's true. And I mean, and like you said, I think it speaks more culturally to us, of how polarized everything is. And, and we'd used politicized earlier, but it's one extreme or the other. And I think one fuels the other and vice versa. And that's just kind of where we are and how we consume people and communicate these days, which is quite sad. And I'm going to now go get in the fetal position in the corner and cry.
I mean, like, it's okay to, for some of these national guys, I mean, it's going to happen. You're going to get pick, they're going to pick some, and you're a victim of sort of your success and that profile, and that's a part of the job. But man, it just seems so personal in some cases and so overboard. Like, it was written, I guess it was Dan Wolken who said he's the most polarizing figure in college football. It's like, where does this come from? I don't. I mean, there's some bad stuff going on in college football, and he's the guy that's sort of fingered as that. I don't get it.
Yeah, I mean, he's kind of become and I think social media has driven that so much more. I think you see, at least I've seen through various issues, things, put up there from Dabo Swinney that, that get carried, way out of context by one side and then the other. And so he becomes kind of the poster child for something, because of Clemson's profile, his profile, that really, are way out of context from where he was in the beginning. So again, like you said, kind of a victim of the success, one way or the other. But it's, I think social media has given that a life of its own.
One of the recent examples during the season was the Florida State postponement aftermath, and he gave his furious response, I guess, the day after the canceled game, and then he kept being asked about it, and so he kept answering. And the freaking, the Twitterverse, these guys who spend more time sitting on their couches on Twitter than actually, I don't know, maybe they could get on Zoom and listen to the press conference themselves, or maybe even participate in it to get the full context. Was like, oh my God, Dabo, why didn't he just stop it with this? He's still on his soapbox. And it's like, well, you do realize he was being asked questions about it. Mm-hmm. It's just crazy how, I don't know. I mean, all these press conferences, as a result of the pandemic, are now accessible. And so, to me at least, I don't know, maybe I'm old fashioned, sort of come from the school that if you're gonna criticize, at least sort of show your face and maybe participate in the process. Mm-hmm. What say you?
Yeah, but I think we're past that reality. I think, again, while I like to feel like social media and that world isn't reality, I think it's as much reality as we give it. Each person gives it. And so, I see a number of posts that gain life and people give credibility to, that I think are just trusted based on it being tweeted or posted on Instagram or whatever, without any substance behind it. It's picking very small sample sizes of words, and no matter what side of various ledgers you're on, you tend to believe it based on that little headline or that wording. So, I think it's the I guess just the ramification of us using social media so much, and many of it, using it as our resource for how we accumulate news and render judgment on things, when in reality, so much it lacks so much context that it gives false representation.
What is your sort of typical routine for monitoring social media? And I guess I mean mainly Twitter. I mean, we're of course, on our message boards a lot, but it's a part of your job to have to monitor what these kids are.
It's a major part of my job. So, and that's why I find myself on it so much, and kind of see how reality gets shaped to a large degree to people by it, because it has reshaped recruiting in a lot of respects. Really schools, people want to know the process of how schools are finding out about recruits. A decade, 15 years ago or whatever, coaches went out into their regions and territories. They knew a number of high school coaches. You might hear about this kid that's coming down the pipeline. You might get tips that way or another. High school coach might bring guys to camp, and you kind of learn about them that way. I mean, today it is, all right, this kid gets an offer as a 8th grade, 9th grade, maybe 10th grader, or it can, a few instances where it comes later. That gets tweeted out. Well, that gets the attention of probably other schools that are comparable to, that kid being recruited, whether it's SoCon level or whatever, a kid's name gets out there. And that leads schools and, who've got all these people monitoring social media, and assistant coaches do it as well. A kid's name starts gaining traction there. And suddenly, you've got responsive offers coming because other coaches have looked at it on Huddle and looked at their highlight film, and boom, things take off from there for a kid. So that's really where prospects are surfacing as much these days, as well as, these kids kind of own their news in much greater respect than they did a decade ago. And so, they're the ones posting offers and, giving out some different recruiting information there that we can dig and respond into. So you have to stay on top of it as much, somewhat for the news, but also just in our shoes to respond to it. Our profession, both you and I come from newspapers. The days of filing stories and feeling like you could clock out for the night are done. It's a constant news cycle where things can always happen. And particularly with high school kids who are posting things at all hours of the day, subscribers on our message board, if a kid posts that Clemson's in his top 3 or Clemson is offered, they want to immediately know what's going on with this kid. They want that news kind of verified. Where does this kid stand with Clemson? And so, whether it's my job to kind of stay on top of that. And so to say there's necessarily a pattern, there isn't one. You just end up checking your phone a lot, trying to make sure you're not missing anything with various kids and what's going on their social media feeds.
It is crazy how different our jobs are because, and maybe I'm lazy, but
these aren't mutually exclusive. No.
I don't have notifications. So when I get an email, the only way I know about it is if I check my email. I don't have any notifications other than text. I don't have to get on Twitter very much. I'm on my message board a lot because that's my job. That's what I get paid for. But my philosophy is, at some point I realized that my mental health was not, was not helped by being on social media all the time and by having the phone banging and bonging. And so my philosophy is if something happens, I'm going to hear about it, like whether it's on our message board or somebody texting me. Mm-hmm. And so therefore I try to stay off of Twitter as much as possible, which I think that makes our boss, Chris Ard, happy because he would prefer that we, that not be.
We don't work for Twitter.
Right. So, but it's interesting. You can't afford to have that philosophy at all because it's a more minute by minute thing for you than it is for me. I can plan for my schedule is way more structured than yours because of unexpected things happen on a far less frequent basis for me than for you. Is that pretty much sum it up?
I think that's fair. Knowing that I've got a bit of a team background way back in the day as well, I think it's different jobs these days. And, I don't think I would not be on social media, if it were not necessarily required professionally, or at least not on social media as much, but it is part of the job. And just kind of comes to the territory, and you try and strike a balance because, really, and I see it sometimes with other peers, whether, like you said, they end up kind of living on Twitter and working for Twitter, and giving out, information there or their takes or whatever that they should be giving their subscribers, or just generally you can live on social media, to the point where you're not really getting anything done. Yeah. You're not producing content, gathering information in other respects. So, there's a balance to be struck. And it's, that's probably a constant battle with people in my line of work, but, it is part of the professional hazard is having to, deal with social media, as well as, as the platform changes and you've got some recruits on Twitter, you've got, maybe more increasingly going to Instagram. What's going to be the next one? I can remember at a time where I would communicate with people through Facebook. I don't know, I don't use Facebook. Recruits don't have Facebook anymore. You're kind of constantly having to read the room and figure out where you need to be to get news or communicate with, or figure out what's going on, on a per prospect basis.
I'll never forget. I think it was 2011, maybe, when they signed their first, big time class, and Jeff Scott was the recruiting coordinator, and he was standing up in the front of the room giving his press conference. And he said one of the biggest sort of advances they made was giving all the coaches iPhones and sort of selling Robbie Caldwell and Dan Brooks, and people and Danny Pearman on this new wonder in the palm of your hand, where you can communicate with prospects and do all that type of stuff. It's pretty crazy how much things have changed since that was an innovation.
Exactly. Yeah. And now support staffs are big enough to where they probably don't even really need to know how to use that iPhone. They've got other people who can do it for them.
Do you, you said that recruits now, they sort of write their own stories. Does that make your job harder or just different?
To me, different, because no matter what, they can put out the details. But by and large, they don't put out the important details unless it's a commitment. Yeah. And even then, I think if I don't think it's any great secret that like commitment stories aren't what drive the bus for us professionally. Mm-hmm. It's taking people, certainly we try and break as much news as possible. But 99% of the time these days, recruits are allowed to break their own news in that regard. What we do is take people through the journey as well as sift through all the noise. Because a recruit can put out a top 12 and Lord knows they will. But telling you which 2 or 3 schools out of that dozen are really the ones to know is where, we can differentiate ourselves. Kind of taking the reader through, okay, there are a bunch of people that will claim interest from various schools. Here are the ones that Clemson likes a little more than the others. Here's who they're targeting. Here are the numbers that they're looking at the positions. Given big picture content is where, Tiger Illustrated certainly differentiated itself, and kind of telling these kids stories, one by one, giving you the background that we can give you, but doing it in a tactful and tasteful manner. I think there are a lot of different ways that, I think more than ever, where reporting and writing matter with recruiting coverage compared to 10 or 15 years ago before social media.
Yeah, what I sort of like to think or say is we're just trying to give people something that they can't get anywhere else, and so there's still a market for that, thankfully.
Yeah. Take people behind the curtain. And that's what got me into the business or into the recruiting side. Anyway, it was just the fascination on how it all comes together and the general manager part of it all. But I think both you and I, with our kind of the newspaper background and writing features and long stories, we like people stories, and you excel at it with a number of the series you've done with with DJ Uiagalelei most recently. But, I think the people interest us, and the fact that I think when you can relate recruits and their families and their situations as people to fans who are looking at it just strictly as, all right, why, here are the 5 schools. Why aren't they coming to Clemson for this, and this reason? When you can kind of help them relate to recruits, I think when you lend, when you make these recruits people, I think it makes fans smarter. And I think just generally, I think it creates a more helpful culture, not only for, I think it helps more create a better culture for coaching staffs and how they deal with their clientele.
When you are trying to figure out what is true, like, and get the real sort of feel for what's going on with prospects, how good of a BS detector do you have to have?
Oh, I think absolutely that is a key ingredient. It is as a coach, and I think it is as just in our line of work. Because I think I think people tend to think of recruiting as cut and dried. Like, okay, where is the kid? They are very early on. People want to know where's the kid going, or think there's a definitive direction, and that's usually not the case. And you usually have, conflicting information, or very often you do, of a kid likes this school, and one school thinks they're in great shape, another school thinks they're in great shape. So you're really, our job is as much gathering as much information we can and trying to sift through and figure out what to give weight, and kind of measuring, who's the front runner. And within that, I've got to not only try and look at the information, but I'm not only assessing the credibility of the sources where it's coming from, but you do kind of keep a running score of who's right and who's wrong more often than not. There are certainly college coaches, college staffs that read the room better than others. And so, you've got some schools where, you're getting all these reports on the great shape they're in recruiting wise. And then, one kid after another is going to a school other than, that one. Or they clearly, like one of Tennessee's recent staffs, Butch Jones' group was horrible at this. They led for everybody, and then suddenly never got anybody. And so that not only does that make you look, if you're the Tennessee recruiting reporter, you're increasingly probably getting burned because you're hearing all these good things about where Tennessee is, and then they are whiffing. And so not only does that, you're losing credibility, your subscriber base is angry with you because Tennessee's not getting them. And you've created this expectation and hope that all these people are coming that aren't, and so I consider my job as much shaping expectation of trying to keep things realistic for where Clemson is with various prospects, while also trying to sort through the information and probably more underselling and over delivering than anything.
I want to share a quick word about Founders Federal Credit Union. If you've been to a sporting event in Clemson, you've probably heard about Founders already. They are the official credit union partner of the Clemson Tigers. In addition to that, all Clemson faculty, staff, and students are eligible for membership as well as IPTAY members. Matt Gross is a proud Clemson alum and the vice president for the Clemson market for Founders Federal Credit Union. Matt's office is located beside the Walmart Neighborhood Market on Old Greenville Highway in Clemson. For more information, go to foundersfcu.com. Another loyal supporter of the Dubcast is Blackacre Law Firm in Greenville, a subsidiary of Parham Smith and Archambault. Blackacre helps South Carolina residents achieve their dreams of home ownership by providing experienced professional representation for real estate closings. Attention to detail is crucial in real estate law. Blackacre is committed to making sure nothing gets by them preparing residential or commercial closings. Blackacre also offers estate planning services for their clients in the Greenville area. Find out more about Blackacre at 864-326-3507. Harris Flooring has been a major part of the facilities enhancements over at Clemson, not just with athletics, but also at the university level. And we are thrilled that they are a part of the Dubcast as a sponsor. Since 1947, the Junkins family and Harris Flooring have provided a unique shopping experience through value in their services, developing the right product solutions, and delivering on their promises. To check out some reviews on their work, just go to their Facebook page, Harris Flooring America. Rave reviews, just first class all the way. Phone number 864-642-6183. When you're developing relationships with people around a prospect, I mean, you obviously haven't known, it's like a new relationship, relatively new. Mm-hmm. And so therefore you have to sort of go on intuition a good bit on who's really shooting you straight and who might not be. Is that the case?
Yeah, I think so. And, people are, because the industry has become somewhat saturated, and it depends on the market as well, but there are many people out there like me. You're trying to find ways to differentiate yourself, but gain people's trust, and very much, I take a very straightforward and candid approach to, who I am. And I mean, there are many people who treat me as a coach. And so I have to, really immediately kind of snuff that out and go, no, I'm not connected with Clemson or any, not affiliated in that regard.
Well, what do you mean? Like, how is that conveyed that they think you're a coach? They call you Coach Strelow?
Oh, I've been called, well, they usually don't get the last name, but it'll start off as Coach for a number of recruits and whatnot. And no. I'm media. I'm someone who writes and tracks who they do. I'm not affiliated. You don't have to schmooze me,
yeah.
because that's what I don't want. I don't want them telling me what I want to hear. I want to know what's really going on. So, it behooves me to kind of distance myself from situations. But yeah, just in general, I think you come across so many folks that you get an idea really quick, be it parents, assistant coaches, influences around, just, how trustworthy they can be, how much you can trust them, how much they can trust, they seem to trust you. And you're trying to, as with any relationship, just kind of, hey, here's who I am. Here's what I'm looking for. And, here's what I do and why I do it. And just see what you can get from there without trying to, leverage for information necessarily.
With the portal, how crazy is this going to get? It's already pretty crazy. And how is it a bad thing to you?
Oh, I mean, I to say I'm old school. I mean, I certainly valued the way things were. And I, as far as transfers in general, I don't, as a fan, I don't like it so much. And as a parent, I don't like it much because I think we've gone away from, I think it's a largely, individualistic culture, that we increasingly have. And so I think we've gotten away from, certainly steered away from a sense of greater good and self-sacrifice, for a team. And I buy I also get the arguments of, look, if you're someone who's been there at a school 3 or 4 years, you're not playing, you've got 1 to 2 years of eligibility left. And look, you're not going pro. You just want to play. I understand, wanting to find a new home and just kind of using those couple years to play.
Like Jordan, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but like Jordan Williams and Niles Pinckney and Lee Anthony Williams.
Absolutely. And I think that is fine. And you've put in your time. You've probably reached your ceiling, or what it's going to be for your final year or two. They've gotten their degrees. To me, that is all fine and good. I think where it bothers me is, as a spectator, as well as just kind of a parent, is, it's often framed as a 40-year decision, college in the high school process. And you hear recruits talk about that's why recruiting is so important and visits are so important. It's a 40-year decision. Well, for many nowadays, it's just a 4-month decision.
Yeah.
All right. You go through that freshman year, or maybe even just spring ball, but probably the freshman season. If you're not playing the amount you want to play, the grass is greener elsewhere, and what the one-time transfer rule will do will basically really open the door even more than it already is to opposing colleges reaching out to your family, your coaches, and saying, hey, you've got this and this in front of this kid here. Come to my school. He can start for us. So recruiting is year-round, nonstop. And I know, and we referenced this earlier, like coaches get no sympathy. And I get that, the salary leads to, you got to put up with more headaches and more instability, all that stuff. But just having to recruit the people, you recruit them, you sign them, and as soon as they get on campus, you still have to recruit them. And it's nonstop. Like Tennessee's, before Pruitt got axed, that staff, was flying out to see parents of players who had gone into the transfer portal, trying to re-recruit them to stay, which is a totally new event to happen in recruiting. Is flying, coaches traveling to make in-home visits with current player parents, keep them from leaving.
The same process that just happened.
Exactly. It is unlimited. It is 24 hours, 7 day a week free agency. That's just hard to stomach. I grew up a huge ACC basketball fan, and at that time you had like guys like Junior Burroughs, Bob Sura, who were playing with their ACC teams for 5, 6, 8 years. It seemed like you knew everybody. And to me, every game changes. The game when I watched it, it was different than when my parents saw it. So you have to change and evolve as fans. But I lost a little with college basketball when the transient nature of players changing homes constantly made it just harder and harder to know what product you were getting. And I think that, I don't think that college football is necessarily in danger of experiencing that, but I do think it hurts the overall product when you've got names changing so frequently, and just general, we know it's business, more than education necessarily, but I think there needs to be a balance there that when it's, if you're bringing in 10 transfers a year, and it's such constant turnover, to me, you're losing. I think there's something to be said for, in the pros, the athletes drive everything. Not everything, but athletes drive a lot. Where I think college fans embrace it part because they can identify with the college. And I think that's a challenge that the NCAA and the Power 5 conferences and everybody faces. Is we're heading down the road more toward it being player controlled, and maybe maybe that there are certainly benefits to paying college players, and that helping them to maximize their value, but the unlimited transfers and everything, and the transfer portal where really everyone's kind of sees the grass is greener. Well, it's really like a large, it's thrift shop. That's a 3/4 recycling bin, of people who put them in, and they've quickly figure out there's not really a market or a home for them. And so, I think there are benefits to it, but I think the cons, in my opinion, outweigh the pros of the direction where it's going.
A lot of these guys are going to end up having to walk on at their next schools because of the sort of perfect storm of the extra year of eligibility. There just aren't going to be enough scholarships to go around, right?
Oh, I agree. I think that, you can shift parts here and there, but I think there are a lot of people who go looking for a new home that recognize, well, they weren't playing where they were. And guess what? People don't think they can play for them either. And there is a finite number of scholarships that everybody has to deal with. And not every school can take 5 to 10 or wants to take 5 to 10 transfers, because, everybody's got a budget, so to speak, and you've got to fit that. So there a lot of people that go looking for a new home that aren't going to be there. And then when you add in this extra year of NCAA eligibility through the freeze from the pandemic, it makes the scholarship that you have. So I think that, as we see more and more,
sorry, you broke up there. You said more valuable. Yeah.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Makes it even more your place is even more valuable than ever before.
Yeah.
I don't know that that's necessarily recognized. I think there's an idea right now that, all right, I can just go look, I'm free market. I'm going to find a great spot where odds are you're more likely to have to drop down school than you are to be recruited up. And I think that's a dynamic that most don't recognize.
So if like somebody parachuted in from Australia, having never seen the talent procurement process in college football, he or she would probably be sort of dumbstruck by the fact that the incoming players, the prospective incoming players, are treated as like the highest of celebrities during the courtship process. 18-year-olds, 17-year-olds, 16-year-olds. We're going to give you this. We're going to give you that. Oh my gosh, you're just the best thing ever. And then once they sign, that stuff is over, and it's boot camp. The de-recruitment, whatever, starts. So I think the point I'm getting to is this kind of it's a strange process that doesn't make total sense. And with the introduction of the liberalized movement of players, if you think about it from the perspective of, for a lot of these guys, the recruitment process, it's like the highlight of their lives. Mm-hmm. They're having reporters calling them, the coaches are calling them, everybody wants to know what they want to do, what they're going to do. And so then it should only follow with college kids. We have to remind ourselves, these are still like 19-year-old kids. I mean, I was stupid when I was that age. And so when they're buried on the depth chart and they think of the prospect of, I could rekindle those glory days, so to speak, when people were talking about me and I was an item and reporters were calling me. Does all that register to you? Like, does that make sense?
It does. And I think particularly in the context of, and I don't even necessarily blame like the individual cases of kids jumping quickly, because this is the way they've grown to view athletics from the get-go. And it really goes down to the grassroots levels of, and it all circles, of course, back to money and our idea of pro sports being the way out. But just generally, like, we saw it in basketball going back 20 years ago, and I've seen it more with football now, where recruiting starts for these guys at 8th grade, 9th grade, maybe even a little earlier, where they're being recruited to, different high schools. They're being recruited between different travel ball teams, and they can end up going to 2 or 3 different high schools. They're certainly picking a high school based on the football program and its direction there. And if things don't go well, they might be recruited to another. You see it with 7-on-7 with football, and just kind of hopping from one to another, but they are recruited to one of those. Football, sports as business is how they grew up with it. And that you are if you don't look out for yourself, who's going to look out for you? Mm-hmm. And so, and that, when framed in that context, I get it. I understand, like, this is how they've come to know the process, how they've come to know what they do, and why there isn't, oftentimes isn't a whole lot of true investment and pushing through periods of struggle or conflict, for the benefit that might bring, versus like, if I don't go and make my situation better, and who else is going to look out for me? And it's just kind of what you do, is look for your best situation constantly. So I mean, I get the struggle there, but it truly goes back well before college. That's kind of the way things are set up now, and we see it in high school football in this state, and absolutely in Atlanta and Georgia and Florida, and in a lot of states generally. But it's about where it gives me the best situation, and so it's bled up to the college ranks.
Clemson and Dabo Swinney seems exceptionally fortified to withstand a lot of this. Is that your sort of opinion as well?
Yeah, I think they're not immune to it. They are able to insulate from it to a degree. I think based on the selectivity of their recruiting. Things are very much framed and termed as far as contributing to a greater whole, being a part of a team. I think that and they look for personalities as well as just situations that kids buy into that. Small pieces of that puzzle of, Clemson usually tries not to offer until a prospect has visited them on his own dime. They want to see a measure of mutual investment in them. And that can drive fans crazy sometimes, but it's the little pieces that add up to the puzzle for, why Clemson has less attrition, and they have attrition. And again, the players they sign are not oblivious to or immune to, the various factors that we've just discussed. Some have gone to several different high schools and been recruited and all that stuff. But there is generally like, hey, this is at Clemson, this is our culture. We play a lot of people, so you'll get to play. But within that context, there's a sacrifice for the team. There's a sacrifice for others at your position in order so that everybody's kind of getting to play, or a lot of people are getting to play. And so, I think a large part of their vetting process is not only making sure those things are reinforced, but you want to know that not only is the player, but is the support group around that player, do they buy into what you're selling there? And so I think that's why the pieces around a prospect are so important for recruiting, why Clemson concentrates on them the way they do, so that when a time gets tough, when that player is homesick, maybe not playing as much as he wants, he's going through that initial transition. He's got people, not only coaches, but he's got the people he's going to at home are saying, I hear you, it's okay, or but we'll get through this, and they are supportive of the process that Clemson is undergoing more often than, all right, bring your ball, come home, and we'll go look for a new home.
Yeah.
So
there's that faith that's been built on the part of the parents as well. Yep. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead if you.
No, I don't. I was done with my point there.
With name, image, likeness, do you have any sort of rough general picture for what you think things are going to look like, or are you like me? And when you start thinking about it, you get a headache, so you just stop thinking about it?
Yeah, I think I just want to go take a shower and I don't know what it's going to look like. And we wrote a little bit about this week. I did find it fascinating a little bit. And you knew to some degree it would play a part, but Clemson right now kind of talking a lot about how they've added enhanced social media for a number of its players. If you follow Amari Rogers, Trevor Lawrence, those guys, they're putting out highlight videos of themselves through the court and from the season or on a week-to-week basis, whatever, where you're going, where did that footage come from? Behind the scenes, up close and personal type stuff from the sidelines, et cetera. Well, it's obviously coming in-house, and it's part of Clemson kind of, and through its, affiliations, it's made a partnership with another company, using to create that kind of video and product so that the Clemson players can post that, and whether it just makes them feel good or helps them grow their brand, certainly grow their following. All that kind of adds up to them trying to, enhance their marketability to various people. And I think that's one piece to the puzzle we're seeing Clemson, kind of proactively jump in on. Various schools are going to have, different approaches there. And, I'm kind of dreading I don't know, dreading is the wrong word. It's not like I'm necessarily involved, but you do wonder in recruiting how that's going to, what people are going to be able to sell, and then what coaching staffs are selling versus the reality of what they can sell, what are they telling recruits that they're going to be able to do for them versus what's the reality is something that I'm interested to see unfold, because I think you're going to see a lot of in various markets. I just I'm very interested, like you, to see what happens, but I don't know that I really want to know how it's going to unfold with, like, who's going to be on the billboard advertising for a used car dealership, those kinds of things.
And we had Mickey Plowler on a few weeks ago, and he was sort of talking about the vision of, okay, well, if Ohio State, really wants these, 15 elite players or whatever, then of course they have enough boosters to band together and produce hundreds of thousands of dollars to I guess create car dealership sponsorships or whatever.
Yeah.
As a source of revenue. But what happens when players don't pan out? And I mean, there's an investment in them. Does that lead to I guess more discretion or reluctance to invest in future players? I don't know.
Mm-hmm. I don't know, the way money he pours in for college athletics, and the way that we support it, and the consumer puts the dollar behind it and saying it's important in our lives. I don't know that that's going to dry up. I think it's going to. I don't know that market kind of explodes or bottoms out even. I think it's. But I do think the battle on who's got the most and whether there's any way to cap it is fascinating, because I don't know what restrictions are going to be put there. I don't know that anyone knows, but it's kind of, if you let it go limitless, which you could certainly draw up logic behind in the whole free market thing. I mean, you can only imagine the possibilities for an Ohio State, for a Texas, with almost unlimited resources. And to what degree is it really? I mean, we already have a college football, world of haves and have-nots. Is it going to reshape a little bit who those haves and have-nots are, or is it really only going to create even more distance between the top money guys and those who are going to spend a ridiculous amount of money just trying to keep up?
Is Clemson in that boat where they can keep up with? I mean, we've already seen over the last 10 years that they're not throwing two wallets out there when they play Ohio State. They're not fighting against that necessarily, as Dabo has said. But is this an area where it could, where Clemson's maybe relatively small stature with donor base and all that could actually end up hurting them?
I mean, I think it's possible. I think it, I want to guard against, overstating it at this point, because we don't really know what direction any of that's going to take. And I don't know that, I think Clemson there's more money there than maybe was being portrayed 15, 20 years ago. Yep. When things were, I think, kind of really undersold. But, I think if you look on a year over year, who's got the resources, I don't think you can question it. There's a gap there between Clemson and the true, the highest of high there in Texas and some schools, as well as when you look at the market here versus in various metropolitan areas, of what a USC might be able to do, or UGA through Atlanta. So, I mean, yeah, college football doesn't really thrive in New York or, some of the various truly the biggest cities where a lot of that can be, espoused in pro or really pushed in pro sports. But I do think it will be interesting to see whether in 10 years that has impacted Clemson's standing in the college football elite at all.
Some Clemson fans just totally scoff at the notion of Dabo eventually going to the NFL. And while I'm certainly not predicting that, I think it's possible because of all this. I mean, I think we're going to see more of it just in general because coaches are about control and you can control a lot more right now. Well, not right now, but just sort of looking ahead if you're in the NFL, right?
Oh, I mean, I think even we're approaching that right now. And I think we've seen that this off season where so many assistant coaches have made the jump from college to the NFL. I think, and somewhat a large part because of what you stated there. I think the college is becoming so much like the pros that, the headaches that the pro that came with working with the pros, a lot of that has been mitigated by what they now have to deal with on the college level. And when you look at that salary and, greater instability at the college level, not, the constant recruiting that goes on, not only with high schools, but generally with players there, and the headaches that come a little bit, like you said, specifically with control, and who's got the leverage in those situations. I think that the line has been blurred for those guys professionally, and I think it makes them, much more likely to entertain professional jobs than stay in college than we were looking at a couple years ago. Now, whether Dabo Swinney makes that jump, I don't know. Again, I don't who can predict 5-7 years from now, that kind of deal. I've always kind of in my mind put Swinney as much on the trajectory of a Mark Richt who might find something else different in life he might rather do down the road. But I don't think you can dismiss, how much the college game is turning into the pro game and how that might lead to Dabo Swinney considering that challenge more so than, 2 or 3 years ago even.
I meant to cover this earlier, talking about the demands of the job and juggling it with your normal life. And I got to ask, I mean, you're a great dad. You're out there coaching soccer teams and really engaged with your kids' activities. I'm sure there are some stories there of so a memorable story or two of being out on the soccer field and getting a text or a notification and having to improvise.
No, I don't. My kids have reached both the level and age where I have removed myself from the glorified soccer coach duties over the last year or so.
Okay.
I've still got one playing travel ball now. So but just generally, I've got a 16-year-old and 14, 13, and then a couple of younger ones. But I mean, even going back to, we talk about, the pros and cons of this job. One of the pros, the great flexibility you have with scheduling, and we've homeschooled, and I've got to be around my kids a lot more than I could ever do in another job, and I'm forever grateful for that. But you're also always on call, and because like we were talking earlier, there's always new things pop up, and you've got to be able to respond to them at that point. As it soccer related, I remember. It was a match on a Saturday morning a few years ago, and in the middle of a match, which 13-year U13 level at that point, coaching, and my phone rings, and I've got to pick it up, and basically it's I'm learning Xavier Thomas is about to commit and go public in a matter of minutes.
It's during a game.
Yes, during a game, and so. My focus, that's not one I can just kind of brush off at that point. because everyone still kind of thought that, he was going to South Carolina at that point. That was not only is it major news when a 5-star is about to commit, but this was a bombshell about to drop. And so, I'm trying to manage all that, and got to get a parent to kind of oversee things. I've got an assistant coach while I'm just kind of turned around, and trying to type on a phone and make the necessary phone calls, and Xavier was calling in, and just trying to manage all that while there's a lot of yelling in the background. And
I thought you said you were all in, Coach Strelow.
Yeah. So yeah, a little distracted at that point, but yeah, that was one of those that by the end you're just kind of like deep breath, man. That's been a wild 30 minutes. But yeah, it can happen. That's the thing about recruiting. It happens at any time. So, I mean, I remember the last Clemson transfer that they took, David Olson, a grad student transfer from Stanford. Rebecca and I go out on a date like once every other month if we're lucky, and out to dinner, and Olson, I find out Olson was popping. And so, I've got to step out and basically leave Rebecca to just kind of eat her dinner, while I'm, because, even if it's a walk on, or he was a scholarship guy, but, what amounted to a practice arm, it was going to, we were going to get questions on Clemson getting this transfer quarterback from Stanford. So I'm taking care of all that, and in the end, just got to wrap up my dinner because we're on a, time limit. And so the double whammy was not only do I have to eat my dinner cold, but then I'm going to Hobby Lobby to walk around for, a half hour, and doing that as opposed to missing the good part of the date night. So it's an interesting business, but that's part of the fun of it.
Do you have a gut on Ty Simpson that you would be inclined to share?
I think we've kind of pointed the arrow to thinking Alabama, or believing Alabama to be his probable direction. We're a week out as of this taping of for when he announces his decision. Clemson, Alabama, or Tennessee. He remains in communication with all three staffs, and I think that all three have kind of been led to believe they've got a good chance there. He's a very diplomatic kid and not one to tip his hand really. I think our information, leads us to believe that Alabama will probably be the pick. But he's done a very good job of kind of keeping things under wraps from the coaches who would know. And so we continue to track Cade Klubnik, the Austin, Texas prospect. I think will probably factor pretty prominently in Clemson's plans as far as the 2022 quarterback.
Mr. Strelow, thank you for joining us. I think we covered quite a lot of stuff.
Always fun, my friend. Good talking to you.
All right, thanks to Paul Strelow for joining us and sharing his time. I'll tell you, one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet. Such a great example for how to be a father, a friend, and just a nice person, which we need more of these days. Thanks to our very loyal sponsors for being a part of this podcast, making it happen. Most of all, thanks to all of you for listening to it. Everybody have a great weekend. Cheers.